Anthony Williams arrived in Washington, D.C. in 1993 to become Chief Financial Officer for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The city he soon came to know was struggling. The district government was in financial trouble with a deficit of nearly $600 million. By 1995, then-Mayor Marion Barry had petitioned the federal government for help. Congress stepped in, appointing a financial control board to provide oversight for the district's affairs, led by Bill Clinton appointee Alice Rivlin.
I first met Tony when we were looking for a chief financial officer. We met in my office at the Office of Management and Budget, and he seemed to us to have an ideal resume for taking over this problem.
Williams came armed with a law degree and a Master's of Public Policy from Harvard, plus hands-on experience running public agencies for the cities of Boston and St. Louis, and also for the state of Connecticut.
I considered the job for about a month or so. Growing up, my dad used to listen to Dick Gregory records, and one paraphrase I got from one of the Dick Gregory comedies is that you can't get hurt jumping out of the basement window. So the district was at a level where I just felt there was no real downside risk.
Williams got to work streamlining the city's bloated agencies and proposing budgets that would lead to a $187 million surplus in 1997. When Marion Barry said he would not seek another term as mayor, friends and colleagues tried to convince Williams to run for the office.
People saw what we had done with the budget, and people were beginning to think, well, if you could get the budget turned around, can you turn the rest of the city around? And there began to be a draft movement.
I remember when Tony walked into my office, I was then at the Federal Reserve, and said, Alice, I'm thinking of running for mayor. And I must have gulped because I had not thought of Tony as a political person. I had thought of him as a very competent financial executive and actually a bit nerdy.
In the Democratic primary, Williams received 50% of the vote in a 6-person field. He went on to win the general election by a 2-to-1 margin. As mayor, he continued to run budget surpluses and to trim the city government. Investors began returning to the city. His success led the control board to end its oversight in 2001, 2 years earlier than planned.
I think Mayor Williams has really set the gold standard in D.C. for bringing our city back, for setting bold goals, and for working with all sectors of people to accomplish them.
His successful first term as mayor led to his re-election in 2002. Continuing to stabilize the district's finances, Williams would balance the city's budget for 10 consecutive years. Cash reserves expanded to more than $1.2 billion by the end of 2004. Williams was also instrumental in helping lure the Montreal Expos to the district, bringing professional baseball back to Washington after a hiatus of 33 years.
When they opened the baseball stadium, the first game over at RFK, everybody gave me a standing ovation for like a minute or so. That was unbelievable. I'll never forget that.
Williams also left his mark on Washington fashion.
You have to be comfortable in the bow tie, though. Even when I don't feel like it, I just wear it all the time now. It's to the point now where if I don't wear a bow tie, people are constantly talking about the fact I don't have a bow tie on.
I think one of the outstanding legacy of Mayor Williams, he came to the city while we had a control board. We don't anymore. He was able to work with the elected leadership, work with the control board, work with members of Congress at tough times, and start us on a path to being fiscally stable. That is what is going to be significantly important about his tenure.
Biggest accomplishment is that when people from around the region go around the country, I don't think they're embarrassed to say they're from Washington. Creating a continuity of good government, instilling that, I think, was a big contribution to the city. So Adrian accelerated, built on what we were doing, changed a lot of it, but he felt good government was important. I think Vince Gray felt good government's important. Muriel feels good government's important and is leading in that effort. I think that's a great legacy, you know?